Everyone okay? Yeah.
Jason leaves. Umbraco upgrades have been a big topic in recent years due to just the sheer number of Umbraco releases. So maybe let's have a little chat about what Umbraco upgrades are, what they mean, how do we tackle them as bump, and how can clients prepare. So I don't know, maybe someone wants to tell us a little bit about what Umbraco is doing currently with upgrades.
So we should explain why we're smiling and laughing when we talk about upgrades
Yeah.
in recent years. So over the years there have been some larger Umbraco upgrades, particularly in the past. Major versions were very different from each other. We've kind of reached an end of that now, but in a way we'll come back to that later, I'm sure. But in the past, upgrading from V6 to V7 was a nightmare. 7 to 8 was a big nightmare. 8 to 9 was a big nightmare. 9 to 10 was quite a big jump as well, possibly not quite as nightmarish. But there were cases where it was easier to rebuild a site than it was to actually migrate code.
In the case of 8, when it launched, there was no official supported migration path from 7. So for about 6 months, you had to completely start from scratch, re-enter all your content until Umbraco made a process.
But I think maybe some clients are a bit shy of upgrades, having been burnt in the past.
Yeah,
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
But things are getting better. I think Umbraco's had a lot of big changes recently that it's needed to make.
Yeah, so these big jumps are not for no reason.
No.
They're not. So from Umbraco 7 to 8 was a complete re-architecture of the platform and set really the groundwork for a modern approach to a CMS.
Yep.
Umbraco 7 at this point is 12 years old, so it's quite old in terms of the web, actually. Umbraco 8 came out in 2019 and has only just, as of February, become end of support, so it's no longer supported. And then the move from 8 to 9 and 9 and beyond has been about moving to Microsoft's modern .NET platform, so .NET Core, now called .NET 5, 6, 7, 8, which really brings with it huge performance boosts and stability, and ultimately just it's better for maintenance long term.
It was the same thing Umbraco did, right? Microsoft said we need to modernize .NET and took a big hit and have modernized it.
Exactly. So that pain that clients have felt is I fully empathize. And when we're trying to sell these upgrades into clients, it's saying, oh, we just did a big upgrade 2 years ago and it took months. And unfortunately, that is the case.
It can be a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah,
sometimes.
people have had these big projects in concurrent years and it's been problematic. But now, the skies are looking bluer.
Things have stabilized a lot, haven't they? And we've seen that with the .NET upgrades to .NET Core, or .NET as it is now, where now actually upgrades since V10 onwards have been fairly easy to do. Yeah. Even between major versions, minor versions, we kind of just install as we're working on other things. That's it. And that's an easy thing to build into the development cycle. Is just, we'll upgrade to the latest patch version and get all the security benefits that come with that. And then the bigger versions, again, it's very rare for something breaking to come in.
Yeah. So in this same timeline, Umbraco has got a lot more mature about making sure they communicate changes and breaking changes properly in the Umbraco 7 days and to some extent the Umbraco 8 days. The reasons upgrades were challenging is because you would upgrade and there would be an inadvertent breaking change that hadn't been documented and it would break a feature you were using or may mean that one of the plugins you were using was incompatible with that version. And so then now Umbraco's taken this more moderate approach, which is that they notify you of any breaking changes at least 2 versions out, and they now have a predictable release schedule for the first time. For those that remember the Umbraco 8 launch, it just happened on a Tuesday randomly. Like out of thin air.
warning.
No one was really expecting it.
Right.
It just happened.
It was just there.
And as I said before, then took 6 months really to have a proper migration path and all of these things. So it was great for the people that wanted to be on the bleeding edge from day one, but it did mean a bit of scrambling around, and for clients it was a confusing time. Now, Umbraco releases new versions every 6 months, which means we get 2 a year, and every 4th release is something called a long-term support version, meaning it gets security patches and features and fixes for a long time, for I think 3 years. And And then outside of that, the other releases are called standard support versions. So those will get a 6-month lifetime followed by a 6-month security period. And after that, you should upgrade. But the upgrades are so easy now. They are maybe a few hours of work. The breaking changes are documented. It's very
and we're at the
straightforward.
point now where we sort of like we'll be working on other features, and then we're just like, well, we'll just throw in an upgrade while we're doing it, right? Because we're working on the project. It's not going to take that long.
And they're reliable. They're not going to break, or we know ahead of time if they're likely to break.
And Umbraco have been much better at running old features and new features side by side. So, like with a good example being block grid and block list replacing nested content and the old grid. You could use both alongside each other for a long time. You don't have to the migration to a new version of Umbraco taking advantage of all the new .NET features and performance and all that. You can do without actually having to do the content migration bit. So actually, what historically would have been like a big bang migration, you have to do lots of work. You could actually even major upgrades. You can actually split that work out over time and say, well, we'll come back to the content later. And we've got a number of clients where we're actively doing that now, where it's the latest version of Umbraco or the latest LTS version of Umbraco, but their content isn't quite future-proof yet. But then there's a plan to do that over the next few months so that when the next LTS version lands, we're ready to go and know that migration is going to be easy.
We've been seeing a lot of this, people doing upgrades kind of in name only. So yes, the platform's upgraded, but if you've not aligned with the way Umbraco is now doing things from a code perspective, the new APIs, or you've left your content using older deprecated versions or property editors in the CMS, then it means that you're going to still have to do a big migration at some point coming up. And if you're making a plan and being more proactive about that and working that into your retainer agreement, etc., so that it's just an iterative piece of work, then it really does take the sting off those upgrades, I think.
Do we want to talk about the latest big change in Umbraco?
Sure.
It's a few years ago now, but we've kind of brushed over. The whole back office was rebuilt, right, in version 14. It's much more modern, much more future-proof, much faster as well. Yeah. But it's it's in its infancy, so we had some teething problems. I think it's fair to say with that. But the system's maturing at this point, coming up into later versions. But that's the latest big upgrade people have been having is that.
So Umbraco 13, which is the current long-term support release, is using a back office that was introduced in Umbraco 8, so has spanned a vast number of versions there, and is tried and tested and polished. And of course, shifting technology stack will naturally introduce new challenges, and with it they've taken the opportunity to redesign some things, try and improve the user experience, improve accessibility, and make it a little bit more feature complete and rounded. Stuff that was there before that maybe didn't quite make sense, was there for legacy reasons, they've been able to reimagine and reintroduce those, which has meant some challenges. For developers, it means if you're using third-party plugins or you've got even some bespoke experiences that you've built in the CMS, things that we like to do, we've had to learn a new technology stack to build in the Umbraco back office. But it is far more modern, far more standardized, less Umbraco flavored. It's a more general development skill rather than it being a Umbraco thing now. So that's more useful. More people can work on Umbraco.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, and it takes into the back office everything we've kind of taken for granted on the front end for the past 10 years, and you sort of doing work in the back office of why can't you do this? But now we can, and it's much more flexible, and we can do more with it in ways that we're used to working in other projects on the front end. It's more normal, like you say.
So perhaps let's talk about convincing a customer that it is worthwhile upgrading, and how we, the process of educating someone about what's involved in the upgrade. Maybe we can talk about that. How do we even broach the topic in the first place?
When we need to talk to a client about upgrading and they've perhaps only upgraded in the last 2 or 3 years or so, then we obviously need to be a bit more thoughtful in that conversation, because we can totally empathise with why they might not necessarily want to go down that route. But we would not be suggesting it if we didn't feel it was justified. People that are concerned about security, I think that's the main reason to upgrade.
Not to say that older versions weren't secure, but they're
True.
just not getting the attention.
The attention, exactly, that's it. You can be more assured, I suppose, that the focus will be more on that aspect of your security going forwards.
And if a patch does then come out, it's a case of being maybe an hour's work to apply the patch rather than requiring a major upgrade or other mitigating work to try and reduce the impact.
I think a lot of the time, if a new client's coming to us, then we will make the decision or make the recommendation on what to do at that point in time, rather than with an existing client who we need to come into with the fresh idea of doing an upgrade. That's when it can be a bit more tricky to handle.
It's the challenge of trying to deliver value, and what we might perceive from a technical perspective as value, end stakeholders don't. They need shiny new buttons on their website, and they want impressive features that users care about. And ultimately, maybe the upgrade will make it more faster and more stable, but it's not going to be a visible change for the average user. So it's a harder
sell, yeah. But we would always try to include those shiny new buttons as well, wouldn't we? We are very conscious of the fact that an upgrade, yes, is not something that a stakeholder or the board is going to look at and think that's a really good spend, but we've got the client's best interests at heart as well at the end of the day. And I think we are able to build trust and convince and give solid reasons for doing it. We're not going to tell people to do something just for the sake of it. We don't want to do something just for the sake of it, because there can be, well, historically there was more work involved than there is now, but it's not something to go into lightly. So we will only ever tell people to go down that route when we think it's worth doing and important.
One of the things that we hear repeatedly from clients is concerns about content freezes during upgrades. Can I still edit my website? What happens to the live website whilst you're upgrading? Upgrades do take a lot of time, especially these older versions to modern Umbraco. Things like, how do we test? Do we have to go and test every page? I think internally we've been pioneering a technique that uses tools like Playwright to do visual regression testing and effectively compare the output of the upgrade against the live site, so that we can have a beyond reasonable doubt assurance that the site is exactly as it works on production. So we're not aiming to change how anything works. It should look and work exactly the same to end users. And we've then got to validate data's come across, etc. I've sat in teams where we've had a bank of content editors doing the content migration for us and moving between Umbraco versions, and we've not got that. It's not a thing, is it really? We do automated data migrations where possible.
Whether that's using usync or whether we're coding something ourselves, like we've got a few different ways of doing that now, actually, because depending on the project, different tools actually for that given migration might work a bit better than others. But it depends a lot, I think, on what that website is currently doing, what the sort of custom elements of that website are, and how easy that is to migrate, really. Because actually content in Umbraco, it's well structured, it's well defined, it's reasonably straightforward to migrate. Code, normal templatey type stuff, it's often different, but we know the differences. We work with that stuff every day. It's more the kind of bigger, complex kind of chunks of, hey, we have this really complicated booking system here that, no one can remember how it works. And that's when a bit more thought needs to go into planning that migration. And
a lot of things come up, isn't it, with an upgrade? It's where we've perhaps inherited something that we're not using on a day-to-day basis, right? Or needing to worry about on a day-to-day basis, that maybe rears its head when we get to this point. So it's
or forgotten features, things that are used rarely. We've had clients that have reporting features that are part of their CMS that are custom and bespoke for them, and it's maybe so they can run an annual report one time, and it's not the kind of thing you think about until you go, we need to upgrade, and all of that functionality now needs migrating to a new system.
And on the other hand, it's a good opportunity to get rid of stuff that you don't need.
A lot of
media libraries and so on and so forth that just...
A lot of the Umbraco products now have become far more rich and powerful in their feature set and do a lot of stuff that people were building themselves before. Umbraco's got webhooks out of the box now, which people were previously doing. It's even, and the community ecosystem as well. There's newer, modern packages, alternatives for.
But it kind of goes back to, I think how clients and agencies communicate, whether that's us or another agency or whatever. But in asking that question of when anything is being built, is it being built with upgradability in mind? It's not like Umbraco are going to release a surprise version tomorrow or something. Like, we know there's a steady release cadence, it's predictable, and actually Umbraco are pretty good at letting us know what it's going to be in it, or what's going to be in it, what that's going to change for us and for clients. So actually, if everything you're building, you're thinking, well, in 6 months' time, there's going to be a new major version of Umbraco to install alongside over the top of this, that it's being built the right way to do that. I think we're very good at that. Not to blow our own trumpet, I guess that's what. but it's something that we often see when we inherit code bases, where it's just, well, clearly a feature had to be delivered very quickly, and it's there, and it's sort of stuck there, and then that can end up holding the entire rest of the website back. And it's really sad then when a client says, oh, we'd really love to be able to do this, and we've got some marketing budget for this new feature. And you think, well, actually, you can't do that because you're relying on this bit of 10-year-old technology here that no one either wanted to upgrade or thought about upgrades.
And as far as we're concerned, an upgrade is bringing that old style of doing something into the modern way of doing. So translations is a big one. A couple of versions ago, translations changed. Multilingual sites, how we build them in Umbraco changed. Much better now, much easier as an editor as well, to keep that up to date and keep it accurate. So part of what we consider an upgrade is, hey, if you're making big use of multilingual sites, we'll need to bring that across to the new way of doing it, so that we can have all these features for free going forwards.
Exactly. Reduces maintenance overhead, improves upgradability, and you're absolutely right, Jason, in saying that when we're building a new feature, even on modern Umbraco sites, we'll be thinking a little bit about the future, what we know of the roadmap, where it's going, to say, well, if we do this, are we going to make a problem for ourselves later? Are we better off in the very short term doing something not quite the way we'd have typically decided, but it's going to make that next leap way easier, much cheaper for the client, perhaps something we can even just do as part of a retainer, not making it a project, really trying to de-escalate these upgrades as being a big thing.
And that's it, where we've got this view of the roadmap ahead. Actually, if we know this project is going to take 6 months or launch in 6 months' time, actually we might say, you know what, let's build it on the new version, even though it's not been released yet. And with the idea it will be stable by the time it launches, so we get all these features and you're already ready for the next upgrade, which will be a lot easier.
I think as a team, we've always been quite willing to stay on the bleeding edge of Umbraco, where we're very familiar with the product, we know the changes going in, and it means we can ultimately take advantage of all these brand new features. So there's absolutely benefit in staying on top of those upgrades, and it makes the jumps even smaller, right? You don't have these big changes in future. For some people, sticking with those longer term support versions is the right strategy. They still release a new version of those every 6 weeks, I think, at least under standard support, with bug fixes and new features. So it's not like it's a stale version anyway, but for some people, that is the appropriate choice.
Absolutely. You've got that stability. You're reducing the number of upgrades you want to do if you stay LTS to LTS. There's also some sites some clients that we know want to avoid features until they're super stable. So there are clients we hold back on those LTS versions deliberately, because we're waiting for it to be, well proven in the wild, before we upgrade to that new feature set, whatever.
Or clients with stringent security requirements, where each version needs auditing and testing, etc. Like that. It's there's different strategies for different people, and I guess it works. If you've got an active development cycle, then staying on the bleeding edge is probably quite a good option. If you're semi-regular retainer client, then maybe once or twice a year between the majors, or just keeping on top of your security patches is a good thing to do.
It's not a one-size-fits-all, is it?
No, absolutely not.
You have to consider each client individually and work out what the most secure, most sensible, most practical path is.